Hello, welcome to the Deep 404. This is going to be a brief Ukraine update. I've just done one on Israel, so just check the channel if you want to see that. There should be another video up there about the same time as this one going up. Avdeevka, still the Russians are making advances in this area. It looks like this is going to become an encirclement of the Ukrainian forces in Avdeevka if the Russians continue with the current approach. The image on the screen you can see there, Avdeevka is in this middle area here. There is Russian push from the northeast, and there is Russian push from the southwest as well as from directly south. There are reports that one of the train lines just to the northwest of Avdeevka, the train station there has been destroyed. It's one of the three main logistic routes which would allow the Ukrainians to resupply Avdeevka. So that at least one of them now has been destroyed, so leaving only two possible real resupply routes. I think I'll just move from Avdeevka and we'll catch up on it again in a moment. I'll go through the Ministry of Defence update and just add in a couple of pieces of commentary from some of the frontline reporting that's coming through. Just a note that in Belgorod region, the Shebekinsky District at Belgorod, there are reports of artillery duels being conducted around that area. Belgorod's just across the border in Russia, just with Ukraine. All right, the Ministry of Defence in the Kupyansk direction, where the Zapad group of forces operate, they're utilising aviation, artillery and the heavy TOS-1 flamethrower systems. In the area of Kupyansk, they have repelled 7 counter-attacks of assault detachments of the AFU, the Armed Forces of Ukraine's 4th Tank Brigade, 14th, 32nd and 115th Mechanised Brigades near Sinkovka, Ivanovka in the Kharkov Region, and Makiivka in Lugansk People's Republic. And I will just get our other map up here, and we can have a look at this. So Kupyansk up in this northern area, this orangey red line up here. Sinkovka is up there. In addition, Russian units inflicted losses on manpower and hardware of the AFU's 14th Mechanised Brigade and 103rd Territorial Defence Brigade near Kupyansk and Berestovoye in the Kharkov Region. The Ukrainians have lost up to 105 servicemen. This will be killed and wounded. It's the way that these numbers are usually reported by the Russian Ministry of Defence. 1 tank, 2 motor vehicles, 1 Polish-made Krab self-propelled howitzer, 1 US-made M109 Paladin self-propelled howitzer, as well as 1 D30 howitzer. Again, in this Kupyansk area, this is quite a few pieces of artillery reported in one day as having been destroyed by the Russians. Reporting from near the Kupyansk area, our aerial reconnaissance and mortar teams have been active since the morning. Furthermore, our snipers tracked the enemy near their strongholds during the night, and a few were sent to disrupt their operations. Artillery activity has decreased in the morning on both sides, and somewhere behind us we can hear aircraft operating. The last comment is somewhat interesting because in that Kupyansk area, there have been reports in the past of Ukrainians. So this red line is sort of the Russian lines to the east of this. There have been some reports in this area here, of Pisky, this area here, that Ukrainians were making attacks on this area here, as this was one of the supply roads in from Russia. This is the Russian border running along there. So I wonder if this talk of aircraft operating behind them may have something to do with something going on around in this area here. Okay, moving to the Krasny Liman area, which is now down to the end of this red line, or this is Liman here. In the Krasny Liman direction, units of the centre group of forces using helicopters and artillery repelled 3 attacks of assault detachments of the AFU's 21st and 67th Mechanised Brigades close to Yampolovka in the Donetsk People's Republic and Chervenaya Dibrova in the Lugansk People's Republic. In the Donetsk direction, in the Krasny Liman direction, the AFU losses amounted to 55 servicemen, 2 armoured fighting vehicles, as well as 2 D-30 howitzers. So from this reporting, it seems clearly that the focus of the Russian activity is up around this northern top part of Kupyansk, looking to push across to the Oskol River, which runs down here. There was in the last fortnight the destruction of 4 or 5 bridges across the Oskol here, making it more difficult for the Ukrainians to be able to resupply and evacuate their wounded out of this area. Okay, so now moving from Krasny Liman now down to the Donetsk area. So our Donetsk area really goes from sort of Seversk here, Soledar, Bakhmut, down to Donetsk city itself down here. In the Donetsk direction, where units of the Yug group of forces are operating, supported by aviation and artillery, they have repelled 3 attacks of AFU assault detachments near Kleshchievka and Pervomayorskoye. Kleshchievka is just south of Bakhmut and is an area which has been fought after very fiercely for the last few months. This is Bakhmut here at the top of the screen and Kleshchievka here, and the train line running into Bakhmut along here, and fighting has been attempting to get access to this train line so that Ukrainians could use this slightly elevated and slight protection to then proceed south into Bakhmut. However, the Russian defences in Avdeevka and Kleshchievka have thus far stopped the Ukrainians from gaining access to that railway line and being able to advance north into Bakhmut. Ground attack aircraft launched strikes at manpower and hardware of the Ukrainian 10th Mountain Assault Brigade, the 53rd, the 93rd and the 110th Mechanised Brigades close to Belgorod in the Lugansk People's Republic, Avdeevka and Mariinka in the Donetsk People's Republic. During the day, the enemy has lost more. The enemy in this case is the Ukrainians. This is Russian Ministry of Defence reporting, so they'll use the term enemy when referring to the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians have lost more than 340 servicemen killed and injured, 1 tank, 5 armoured fighting vehicles and 6 motor vehicles. In the course of counter-battery warfare, 1 French-made Caesar self-propelled howitzer, 2 D-20 howitzers and 1 D-30 howitzer were neutralised. In addition, 3 AFU ammunition depots were destroyed close to Avdeevka, Orlovka and Latochinko in the Donetsk People's Republic. Here, some reporting. Now, this is from a Ukrainian, Vitaly Barabash, in the Ukrainian-occupied area of Avdeevka. He reports there is a lot of destruction. They, in this case the Russians are mainly trying to hit multi-storey buildings in the city. The situation is very tense. For the 3rd day now, the Russians have not stopped assaulting positions around the city. They shoot both at positions and at the city with everything they have. Hundreds of attacks on positions, dozens on the city. So that's reporting from Ukrainian within Avdeevka. It does sound as though the Russians are making a real push to take Avdeevka and are hitting it with everything they've got at this stage. There have been reports that the Russians are using up to 200 pieces of machinery, artillery and tanks to attack the area of Avdeevka at this stage. Now, these 3 red lines here are just indicating the general directions of forward motion from the Russians around Avdeevka itself. Ocheretny, this area here is where I was referring to earlier, that the train station here has been destroyed now by Russian artillery or missile strikes, or it's probably rocket strikes. There are also reports that Wagner forces are actively engaged in the push to take Avdeevka, and that this area here, the area sort of known as the dumps, this is something to do with this coke plant, but this area here, which is higher ground, has now been captured by the Russians, and this area then gives a view down over all of the township itself. So the Russians pushing in these areas and then capturing some of these higher points around the dump area, the coke plant dump area. In South Donetsk, so in South Donetsk direction, units of the Vostok group of forces utilizing helicopters and artillery inflicted losses on manpower and hardware of the Ukrainian 58th Motorized Brigade and 79th Airborne Brigade near Urozhaina and Novo-Mikhailovka in the Donetsk People's Republic. So this is in this area here. Urozhaina is in here. Up to 165 servicemen, 2 motor vehicles, 1 Grad multiple launch rocket system combat vehicle, 1 M109 Paladin self-propelled howitzer, and 1 Akatsiya self-propelled artillery howitzer were neutralized in the South Donetsk region. Moving to Zaporozhye here. In the Zaporozhye direction, 2 attacks of assault detachments of the Armed Force of Ukraine's 23rd and 65th Mechanized Brigades near Robotny, or Robotino, which is here, were repelled by actions of the Russian units, airstrikes and artillery fire during the day. The Ukrainians lost up to 30 servicemen, 1 tank, 2 armoured fighting vehicles and 1 US-made M777 artillery system, along with 1 D-20 howitzer and 1 US-made M119 howitzer. Some reporting from the field. The Ukrainians are exerting, what's written here is the enemy, the Ukrainians are exerting pressure in this area. Infantry units are advancing towards our Russian positions, and with artillery support, they are making determined efforts to establish even a single trench in an open field. So here, this Russian reporting that the Ukrainians using artillery support, infantry units without support of armoured vehicles are attempting to advance to capture even a single trench in the open field. So it sounds like it's very difficult for the Ukrainians to advance in this area, and this is towards Verbova, just here. So Ukrainians trying to get into this township of Verbova, coming through these fields through here. The Russian artillery, or our artillery, as was reported here by this Russian correspondent, is engaging the enemy's advances at close range. This temporarily deters any attempts by Ukrainian groups to approach. But the continuous rotation allows AFU forces to replace the wounded and fallen soldiers and keep attacking our positions. So as we've seen before and had reports of for quite some time, continued force and attempts by the Ukrainians to advance in these areas, now resorting to tactics of just sending out small groups of infantry unsupported by armoured vehicles. Their losses are reportedly high, but as is being reported by this Russian person at the front line, they are constantly able to resupply in this area, and that's why they're keeping up these attacks. Moving to the Kherson region, down the Dnieper River, Kherson here. In the Kherson direction, up to 50 servicemen, 11 motor vehicles and 1 D-30 howitzer have been neutralised during the day. In addition, 1 electronic warfare station as well as 1 ammunition depot were neutralised close to Berestovoye in the Kherson region. In this area here, we have had a number of reports over the last few weeks of electronic warfare items being destroyed, reports of the Ukrainians moving into these island areas and deploying electronic warfare equipment, deploying like radio repeater equipment to allow their troops to be able to communicate and to allow their drones to be able to be flown further in this direction. Finally, just before I was doing this report this morning, Crimea and even as far as the Kerch Strait, there were air raid warnings being generated in these areas. The Kerch Strait bridge had been closed for a short period of time, although just as I was starting this report, it seems as though those air raid report sirens and alerts have been called off and that the bridge may be opening again. So uncertain as to if there were actually any attacks made that struck anywhere in the Crimea Sevastopol area, or if they were launched, if they may have been shot down by air defence. Okay, that's it for today. Just a brief summary on what's happening in Ukraine. I will look to be back tomorrow with an update again on Ukraine and Israel. I have done an Israel report, which will be up online at about the same time as this one, so just check the channel if you'd like to watch that. Hey, thanks for watching. Have a good Friday. I'll talk to you soon.